So let's talk about milk, okay? Because mammalian milks are designed to be species specific foods for the infants that are born to a particular mother. And as a result, mammalian milks provide the correct ratio of nutrients for that particular species infant. The milks are designed to stimulate the growth and boost the immune function of what? That particular species infant. Carnivore infants require milk that has a lot more energy and protein than herbivore and or human milk, because carnivore infants are born at an extremely immature state of development. Why is that? It's because carnivore females cannot carry their infants for very long because they have to hunt in order to get food. And so carnivore females deliver their infants by 14 to 15 weeks of pregnancy, which is basically, 2 to 3 months. And they deliver the babies, and the babies essentially complete their development outside the womb. Whereas by contrast, herbivores carry their infants for 36 to 40 weeks or more, meaning that they invest a lot more time and energy into carrying their infants to a much more mature state of development. And so as a result, these carnivore milks are much richer, contain a lot more energy, a lot more protein, a lot more fat than the herbivores do. So you can see that from these charts. You look at the amount of total solids, the amount of fat, the amount of protein, and you compare that to the two plant eaters down at the bottom, and you see across the board, the carnivores have a lot more total solids, much higher fat content, and a lot more protein. But what's really interesting is look at the two plant eaters at the bottom. Cows and humans have roughly the same amount of solids, right? They also have essentially the same amount of fat. And you might say, wow, humans and cows have very similar milks. Not on your life. And I'm going to show you that in greater detail in these upcoming slides. The type of fat that's in cow's milk is very different from the type of fat in human milk. I'm sure that the people listening to this lecture have probably seen human milk. Human milk is very thin looking and has a translucent quality, whereas whole cow's milk is opaque. It's very white and you can't see through it. Moreover, you can take whole cow's milk and you can churn it and get butter out of it, or you can take it and make ice cream. And that's because much of the fat that's in cow's milk is highly saturated fat. It will turn into a solid at room temperature, or it will rise to the top and become this thick cream. You can't do that with human milk. You can't make butter out of it. You can't make ice cream out of it. When you look at the protein content of cow's milk versus human milk, cow's milk has almost 3 times as much protein as human milk. Why is that? It's because protein is not used for energy. Proteins are building blocks. And a baby cow is growing much faster than a baby human. Humans are the slowest growing animals on this planet, and certainly amongst the mammals. It takes a human infant 18 years to reach maturity. A baby calf will go from about 60 to 80 pounds at birth to 1,200 pounds in 3 years. Well, 1,200 to 2,000 pounds in 3 years. it's growing at a phenomenal rate. So it needs a whole lot more protein than humans. But look at the amount of lactose, which is super interesting. Now, a human baby at birth, you know, a good sized baby is maybe 6 to 8 pounds. Babies that are larger than that really are too big. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that in a minute too. So, you know, you got a calf versus a human baby. The calf is like 10 to 12 times the size of a human baby at birth. Yet, proportionately, the human baby has 1.5 times as much sugar as the cow, as the calf. Well, why is that? Well, the sugar is not used for energy for the muscles. It's used for the brain. The brain likes nothing but sugar for its metabolism. And the human infant has the largest brain in proportion to its body size of any infant. And it needs much more sugar for its metabolism. And when you feed a baby human with something other than its mother's milk, you are, in a sense, starving its brain of energy. And, you know, that may explain why some of these people who insist on feeding their babies cow's milk end up with, you know, knuckleheads as adults. That's just my theory. Anyway, mammalian milks are species-specific endocrine signaling systems that activate these growth genes called mTOR genes and other cellular proliferative genes and suppress cell destruction. I'm going to talk a little bit about the fact that we've now discovered that mammalian milks have in them messenger RNA fragments from the mother, mRNA fragments that actually help program the baby's genes. And, you know, now that we're all familiar with mRNA from these vaccines that we all have taken to try and ward off COVID, we know just how bioactive mRNA is. Well, now we realize that all of these mRNA fragments that are in milk are there to help jumpstart the baby's physiology. Well, I don't know how to phrase this. It's like, what the heck are we doing to ourselves by ingesting all of these bovine mRNA fragments? What are we telling our genes to do? You know, no wonder so many human beings look like cows. And, you know, normally the type of sustained gene activation that comes from ingesting milk should only be occurring during the rapid growth phase that happens during infancy. But when people are drinking milk throughout their lifetime, they are telling their genes to do things that they shouldn't be doing during their adulthood, and that is trying to grow. And that is one of the reasons that we see that ingestion of dairy products are associated with things like cancer and inflammation and other proliferative problems like the metabolic syndrome, obesity, acne, and other tumor type developments, both benign and cancerous, that happen in societies where people are continuing to consume dairy products throughout their lifetime. Dairy consumption is the most abnormal dietary practice humans engage in. Nowhere else in nature do you see any mammalian species continuing to consume dairy products throughout its lifetime at all, and let alone the dairy products of a different species. This is perverse. It is just bizarre. It makes no sense whatsoever. And the fact that we have normalized it does not make it normal. And we need to get that through our heads. It is just unreal what we're doing to ourselves and to our children. So let's look at human breast milk composition. So Human breast milk has a very high carbohydrate content, a very high fat content, because the baby does need energy, but it has a very low protein content. And remember, I said proteins are building blocks. So why does the human breast milk have such a low protein content? Because humans are very slow growing. Our babies don't need a lot of protein. They don't grow very fast. And it turns out that one of the reasons people got so early nutrition researchers got so screwed up in terms of their ideas about what constituted good quality protein and how much protein people needed was because they took rats and tried to raise baby rats on human milk and on plant protein, and found that the baby rats didn't do well on plant protein. They didn't grow well. And they concluded that, oh, well, that means that those plant proteins weren't good quality proteins. Well, no, it just meant that the plant proteins weren't concentrated enough for those baby rats. But the fact is that if you fed those baby rats human breast milk, they would die as well, because human breast milk doesn't have enough protein for baby rats, because baby rats are growing too fast for the amount of protein in human milk. If let's say there's a family where they have a family dog, and the mother of the family is pregnant and the dog is pregnant, and they both give birth at the same time, but the dog, the female dog, sadly dies. And the mother says, well, she only had 2 puppies and I got my baby over here. And so I'm going to just, express enough milk to feed the baby. And also I'll try to nurse the puppies. Those puppies would die trying to nurse on human milk, because there's not enough protein in the mother's milk to keep those puppies alive. Okay. Now, if the reverse were done, if the mother, let's just say she couldn't produce enough milk to feed her baby, but she decided, well, you know what, I must take some of this milk from my dog and feed my baby, the baby would stay alive because there's so much protein and fat in that dog's milk. It would feed the baby. It's kind of gross and disgusting, but it would also not be good for the baby, because that's just way more than the baby needs. But my point is that that there's not enough protein in human milk to sustain a carnivore or even a baby rat.